If you've been waking up tired even after a full night's sleep, or your vision seems a little blurrier than it used to be, or you've noticed you're thirstier than normal no matter how much water you drink, your body might be trying to tell you something important. And it has to do with a number most people over 55 have heard of, but don't fully understand. A1C. Here's the thing. Most people think managing blood sugar means one thing only: cutting out sugar and hoping for the best. But that's actually one of the biggest misunderstandings out there. And it's why so many people struggle for years without seeing real progress. There's a much bigger picture here. And once you understand it, the number on your next lab report might finally start moving in the right direction. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what A1C really measures, why it matters so much more after age 55, and the everyday habits that doctors quietly recommend but rarely have time to fully explain during a 15-minute appointment. We'll also talk about a mistake almost everyone makes with their evening routine that can quietly undo an entire day of healthy choices. So stay with us, because that part alone could change how you think about your next dinner. Let's start with the basics. Explained simply, your blood sugar, also called glucose, is constantly moving up and down all day. It rises after you eat, and it settles back down between meals. A single blood sugar reading is like a snapshot. It only tells you what's happening in that exact moment. A1C is different. Think of it like a photo album, instead of a single photo. It reflects your average blood sugar levels over the past 2 to 3 months. That's incredibly useful information, because it smooths out all those little ups and downs and shows the bigger trend. Why does this matter so much for people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s? Because as we age, our bodies naturally become a little less efficient at handling sugar. The cells that respond to insulin, the hormone that helps move sugar out of the blood and into your muscles for energy, can become more resistant over time. This doesn't mean getting older guarantees high blood sugar. It simply means the margin for error gets a little smaller, and small daily habits start to matter more than they did when you were 30. Doctors generally consider an A1C below 5.7% to be in the normal range. Between 5.7 and 6.4 is often labeled pre. 6.5 and above is generally the threshold associated with type 2 diabetes. But here's something important to understand. These numbers are not a life sentence. They are a snapshot of a trend, and trends can shift. That's really the whole point of this video, showing you how that shift happens in real life, not just in theory. Now, here's where most people go wrong, and it's worth pausing on this, because it trips up so many well-meaning people. They hear lower your blood sugar and they think the entire solution is avoiding sweets. So they cut out desserts, maybe switch to a diet soda, and then feel confused when their next lab results barely change. Sugar matters, yes, but it's only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Sleep, stress, movement, meal timing, and even the order you eat your food in can all influence that A1C number. We're going to walk through each of these, one at a time, so by the end you'll have a complete picture instead of just half of one. Let's start with food, since that's usually where people want to begin. One of the most practical tools doctors and dietitians recommend is something called the plate method. It's simple enough that you don't need to count a single calorie or memorize complicated numbers. Picture your dinner plate divided into sections. Half of the plate is filled with non-starchy vegetables. Things like green beans, broccoli, spinach, peppers, or a simple side salad. A quarter of the plate is reserved for lean protein, such as chicken, fish, eggs, tofu, or beans. The final quarter is for carbohydrates, and this is where whole grains, starchy vegetables, or a modest portion of rice or potatoes would go. Why does this arrangement help? Vegetables are full of fiber, and fiber slows down how quickly sugar enters your bloodstream after a meal. Protein does something similar. When you eat carbohydrates alongside protein and fiber, instead of alone, your blood sugar tends to rise more gradually instead of spiking sharply. That gentler rise is much easier on your body, and over weeks and months, gentler rises add up to a lower A1C. Here's a small trick that surprises a lot of people the first time they hear it. The order in which you eat your food on the plate actually makes a difference. Several studies have found that eating vegetables and protein first, and saving the starchy carbohydrates for last, can reduce the blood sugar spike after a meal. It costs nothing, takes no extra time, and simply means starting with your salad or your chicken instead of diving straight into the breadbasket or the pasta. Now, I promised you something about the evening that trips a lot of people up, and here it is. Many people eat their largest, heaviest meal at dinner and then sit down for the rest of the night. That combination, a big meal followed by hours of sitting or lying down, tends to keep blood sugar elevated for much longer than the same meal eaten earlier in the day with some light movement afterward. We'll talk about exactly what kind of movement helps in just a moment, because it's simpler than most people expect. Let's talk about fiber a little more, because it deserves its own spotlight. Foods like oats, beans, lentils, berries, and leafy greens are rich in a type of fiber that acts almost like a sponge in your digestive system, slowing down sugar absorption. Most adults only get about half the fiber they should each day. A gradual increase, adding a serving of beans to a soup, or choosing a piece of fruit instead of fruit juice, since juice lacks the fiber that whole fruit contains, can make a meaningful difference over time. The key word there is gradual. Jumping from very little fiber to a lot all at once can cause digestive discomfort, so easing into it over a few weeks tends to work much better. Now, let's move to something just as powerful as diet, and in some ways even simpler, movement. You do not need to run marathons or join a gym to influence your blood sugar. In fact, one of the most effective and most overlooked strategies is something called the post-meal walk. Research has shown that walking for even 10 to 15 minutes after a meal can meaningfully reduce the blood sugar spike that follows eating. This works because your muscles are like sponges for glucose. When you move them, they pull sugar out of your bloodstream to use as fuel, without needing as much insulin to do the job. Think about how this fits into a normal day. After dinner, instead of sitting down right away, a short walk around the block, around the yard, or even around the house can help. It doesn't need to be intense. It doesn't need to be long. Consistency matters far more than intensity here. 3 short walks after meals throughout the day can do more for blood sugar control than 1 long walk done just once. Strength training also plays a valuable role, and this is especially true after age 50. Muscle tissue is one of the primary places your body stores and uses glucose. As we age, we naturally lose some muscle mass, a process called sarcopenia, unless we actively work to maintain it. This doesn't mean lifting heavy weights at a gym. It can mean simple resistance exercises using your own body weight, light dumbbells, or resistance bands, done 2 to 3 times a week. Chair squats, wall push-ups, and gentle band exercises are all excellent starting points. Maintaining muscle mass helps your body use insulin more efficiently, which directly supports a healthier A1C over time. Now, here's a curiosity worth mentioning before we move forward. Many people assume that if they exercise, they can eat whatever they want afterward, and their blood sugar will simply balance out. It's a common belief, but it's not quite that simple. And understanding why will help you avoid a mistake that undoes a lot of hard work. We'll circle back to that shortly, once we've covered a topic that surprises almost everyone. Sleep. Sleep might be the most underestimated factor in blood sugar control, and it's worth taking seriously. When you don't get enough quality sleep, or when sleep is frequently interrupted, your body responds by producing more cortisol, a stress hormone, and this can make your cells more resistant to insulin the very next day. In simple terms, 1 night of poor sleep can leave your blood sugar running higher than usual, even if you eat exactly the same way you always do. For adults over 55, sleep can become trickier for a variety of reasons. Needing to use the bathroom more often at night, changes in sleep architecture that come naturally with age, or conditions like sleep apnea, which becomes more common as we get older and is worth mentioning to a doctor if you or a loved one notices loud snoring or gasping during sleep. Aiming for 7 to 8 hours of consistent, quality sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's a genuine piece of the blood sugar puzzle, every bit as real as diet and movement, even though it rarely gets the same attention. A few practical habits can help here. Keeping a consistent bedtime and wake time, even on weekends, helps regulate your body's internal clock. Limiting bright screens in the hour before bed can help your body produce melatonin, the hormone that signals it's time to sleep. And if snoring or nighttime breathing issues are a concern, mentioning this to a healthcare provider is genuinely worthwhile, since untreated sleep apnea has been linked to higher blood sugar levels over time. Now let's return to that exercise mistake I mentioned earlier, because it ties in closely with what we just discussed. Many people believe that if they've been active during the day, they've earned a large, carbohydrate-heavy meal in the evening, especially one eaten quickly and followed by sitting for the rest of the night. But remember what we talked about with post-meal movement. It's the combination of the meal and what happens afterward that matters most. Exercise earlier in the day is wonderful and genuinely helpful, but it doesn't fully cancel out a large meal eaten late at night with no movement afterward. The habits work best together, not as trade-offs against each other. Let's talk about stress now, because this one is deeply connected to everything we've already covered. Chronic stress, the kind that lingers for weeks or months, whether from health worries, family responsibilities, grief, or financial pressure, keeps cortisol levels elevated for extended periods. And as we mentioned with sleep, elevated cortisol tends to raise blood sugar and make your cells more resistant to insulin. This is one of the reasons some people find their blood sugar numbers creeping upward during particularly difficult seasons of life, even when their eating habits haven't changed much at all. This doesn't mean stress is something you can simply choose to switch off. That's not realistic, and it's not fair to expect that of yourself. But small, consistent stress reduction practices can genuinely help over time. Something as simple as 5 minutes of slow, deep breathing, a short period of quiet time each day, gentle stretching, time spent outdoors, or maintaining connection with friends and family has been shown to help lower stress hormones. This isn't about eliminating stress from your life entirely. It's about giving your body small, regular breaks from it. Now let's talk about something practical and important. Monitoring and medical care. If you've been prescribed medication for blood sugar management, taking it consistently, exactly as your doctor recommends, is one of the most important things you can do. It's common for people to feel like they can skip a dose here or there once their numbers start improving. But blood sugar medications often work by keeping levels steady over time, and inconsistent use can cause more fluctuation, not less. If cost, side effects, or the complexity of a medication schedule are causing you to skip doses, that's genuinely worth bringing up with your doctor or pharmacist rather than adjusting things on your own. There are often alternatives or solutions they can offer that you might not know about. Regular monitoring matters too, whether that's periodic blood sugar checks at home or your scheduled A1C blood work every 3 to 6 months. Think of this data the same way you'd think of checking the weather forecasts before a long trip. It doesn't control the outcome by itself, but it helps you and your doctor make informed adjustments along the way, rather than waiting until a problem has grown much larger. And this brings up something worth saying clearly. Nothing in this video is meant to replace the guidance of your own doctor. Every person's health situation is different, and factors like kidney function, other medications, and additional health conditions all play a role in what's safe and appropriate for you, specifically. If you notice new or worsening symptoms, things like unusual fatigue, numbness or tingling in your feet, slow healing wounds, sudden vision changes, or unexplained weight loss, those are worth discussing with a healthcare professional promptly, rather than waiting for your next scheduled appointment. Let's bring a few of these ideas together with a realistic example, because it's often easier to picture how this works in real life than to think about it as a list of separate rules. Imagine someone who used to eat a large bowl of pasta for dinner, then sit and watch television for the rest of the evening, going to bed sometime after midnight because they had trouble winding down. Without changing their entire life overnight, a few small shifts might look like this: eating a smaller portion of pasta alongside vegetables and a source of protein, eating the vegetables and protein first, taking a 15-minute walk after the meal instead of sitting down immediately, and gradually moving toward an earlier, more consistent bedtime. None of these changes are extreme. None of them require special equipment or expensive programs, but layered together and repeated consistently over weeks and months is exactly the kind of pattern that tends to show up as real improvement on an A1C test. That word, consistency, really is the heart of everything we've talked about today. A1C doesn't move because of one great day or one difficult day. It moves because of patterns repeated over roughly 90 days at a time. This is actually encouraging news, if you think about it the right way. It means you don't need to be perfect. One dessert at a birthday party or one skipped walk isn't going to undo months of good habits. What matters is the overall pattern you return to, day after day. Let's do a quick recap of everything we've covered, because there's been a lot of valuable information, and it helps to see it all together. A1C reflects your average blood sugar over roughly the past 2 to 3 months, giving a clearer picture than any single reading alone. Food matters, but so does the order you eat it in. And pairing carbohydrates with protein and fiber helps create a gentler blood sugar response. Movement, especially short walks after meals, can meaningfully reduce blood sugar spikes, and maintaining muscle through gentle strength training supports better insulin use as we age. Sleep is a far bigger factor than most people realize, with poor or inconsistent sleep, raising cortisol and making blood sugar harder to control. Chronic stress works in a very similar way, and small daily practices to manage it can genuinely help. Taking medications consistently and keeping up with regular monitoring gives you and your doctor the information needed to make good decisions together. And above all, consistency over time matters far more than perfection on any single day. None of these changes need to happen all at once. In fact, trying to overhaul everything in a single week is one of the most common reasons people give up before they see results. Choosing just one or two of these habits to focus on first, and giving yourself a few weeks to build them into a natural part of your routine, tends to work far better than trying to change everything overnight. Small, sustainable steps, repeated consistently, are what actually move that number over time. Before we close, we'd genuinely love to hear from you. Which of these points surprised you the most today? Was it the idea that eating order matters? The connection between sleep and blood sugar? Or maybe the post-meal walk habit? Let us know in the comments below, and if you feel comfortable sharing, we'd love to know what part of the world you're watching from today. There's a wonderful community here of people supporting each other through similar health journeys, and hearing each other's experiences often helps more than any single video ever could. Remember, information like this is meant to support the conversations you have with your own doctor, not replace them. If anything in this video resonated with you, consider bringing it up at your next appointment and asking how it applies to your specific situation. Thank you for spending this time with us today. Taking an interest in your own health, at any age, is something worth being proud of. We'll see you in the next video.